continuing to talk about the Acolyte because I thought I had everything I had to say about it, but um, as I tend to do, I have a lot to say about certain things, and I kind of want to get it all wrapped up so I don't have to come back to it. So this is continuing on from my previous video. Um, so yeah, with the Acolyte, I mean the problems with it were just so many things really. The fact that they didn't do a Sith based show, which is what we said they would do, what we got was a weird story that looked like it was trying to copy off Frozen with two sisters, where the idea, I guess, was one of them was the good sister and one of them was the bad one, and then they were going to swap around, and it was going to, challenge our preconceptions of what good and bad is, or something stupid like that. And the funny thing is, I'm writing a book, a sci-fi trilogy. It's actually something I've been reading for years, which is a similar idea actually to this, but it's a good example of how not to do it. And like the two main characters, like May and Osha, which obviously both played by the same actress who can't act. And I mean, Star Wars is full of examples of times with wooden acting, and I understand that, but it's a different thing when a character like, say, Mace Windu, like Samuel Jackson's acting is shit because the story's not his story. It's not revolving around him. If he gives a flat performance, it doesn't matter so much. And I do think that even though a lot of performances in the prequels were quite bad, there was also some that were actually really good that people kind of overlook. Like Liam Neeson's Qui-Gon Jinn in Phantom Menace was really good. And I also think that Ewan McGregor, by the time he got to Revenge of the Sith, he wasn't so great at first, but he was really good as well. Hayden Christensen was never amazing, but he improved a lot by Revenge of the Sith too. So I think the as the prequels went on, the core characters were all right. They're not going to win any Oscars, but they were okay. But the problem with the Acolyte was it's all focusing, or you can tell the creator wants you to focus on these two characters and wants you to like them. And the thing with the show is that, like, it doesn't allow the audience the benefit of making up their own mind about the characters. It's like you can feel that the creator wants you to think a certain way about the characters that you're seeing. Like, they want you to love May and Osha, this show, and she wants you to love these witches. And I'm like, that's not really the way that decent TV works. Like, what you do is you just sort of put the character out there as they are, showing the flaws, showing the things that aren't good about them, showing things that are good about them, and people will make up their mind whether they like the character or not. I think one of the greatest shows I think that had really good female characters was Mad Men, because it didn't portray the women as these. It could easily have been very, very superficial. The women are all angels and the men are all arseholes. And while definitely there was an aspect of Mad Men that dealt with the sexism of that era, absolutely that was front and centre, which it had to be. It wasn't above making the female characters real and making them make dumb decisions at times, and showing that, yeah, they were repressed, but they were making their own decisions, and sometimes rubbish ones, like a regular person does. And it made you view those female characters, in fact, you have more respect for them because they were real. They felt real. And as Mad Men went on, and as times changed, the agency of the female characters and the journeys a lot of them went on were fantastic. They were really interesting, but it was done in a very nuanced way. And I never felt with a show like Mad Men like it was presenting to me immediately the female character that it was trying to tell me, you have to love this character. Or a character like Don Draper, it was like immediately telling me, you have to hate this character. It was just showing you them in a very honest way. And I think, like, the first episode of Mad Men, I still think it's one of the greatest pilots of all time. Like, no one talks about it as the greatest pilot of all time, but I think it was an amazing opening episode for being a character study on Don Draper and showing his whole life, showing the ways in which he's good, showing the ways in which you actually quite like the guy. Like, for example, he's at the start, like, he's talking to a black guy who's serving him, and he's clear that he's not actually racist towards the guy. Like, he's happy just to have a chat to him. And it brings up the fact, obviously, that it's in that era, people would be like, "Oh, why is a white guy talking to a black guy?" But he's not bothered about it. So you have a bit of, you think, "Oh, he's not so bad. He's not like a really racist guy." And then, throughout the day, he isn't this arsehole throwing his weight around. He like takes this guy down a peg or two who's at the start of the show an absolute knob, and then he becomes nicer later. And you really start to think, oh, he's a pretty alright guy in some ways. But then other times, you think, no, like, what's he doing? Like, he's cheating on his wife with this other girl. You're like, oh, shit. Like, you just, at the end of that episode, I'm like, well, there's some aspects of his character I really like and respect. You respect what his work is, you respect how he achieves things through his work, and you respect his outlook on things in some ways. And also, when you find out more about his upbringing, where he came from, you really respect him a lot more. That comes into the series as it goes. So, but Don Draper's forever one that you sort of this way, that way about it. And a lot of women fancied him. A lot of women thought he was really fucking hot. And it's like, yeah, they know he's an arsehole, but they still fancied him, like, fucking thought he was an interesting character. And it's like, well, that's interesting, isn't it? Because you've got a character who is, like, cheating on his wife, doing all these horrendous things, but women like the character, or they like to watch him at least. And again, it's like, it doesn't need to be a white and white character, does it? But this show isn't like that. It wasn't like ideally a show from the Sith point of view should be showing the horrible side of it too. It should be showing like the corruption and failure, and like the way that the dark side works is it's utterly selfish to the point where you only care about yourself. And there's no way that someone who walks path of the dark side can have a genuine connection to somebody else. That's just not how the dark side works. They have a connection that's based on power and control. So they have an apprentice because they want the apprentice to go off and do the dirty work that they don't want to do, or they don't want to expose themselves to do. So, for example, Darth Sidious / Palpatine has Darth Maul. He's not friends with Darth Maul. Him and Darth Maul don't have a great sort of bromance going on. Like, Darth Maul is his apprentice. He's mean, he's horrible, he's an animal. And he's a tool that Palpatine uses to distance himself from the real threat. To be able to use him without it coming back to him. And, they always say, like, the master and apprentice, that's why there's only ever two. Hey, get off! Get off! That's why there's only ever two Sith, because they're so selfish that they kill each other off. So, and the only reason there's two is, even within that power dynamic of two, they're always trying to fuck each other over. There's a master who's basically chucking the apprentice out there and hoping, or possibly thinking at some point, well, this guy might not last, or he might overthrow me, so I'll look for another one. And there's the other aspect of it, which is the apprentice who's trying to become the master. Like with Luke and Vader, like in Empire, Vader's literally trying to make a play and tell Luke, right, we'll join together and we'll fuck over the Emperor. Like, he's not got any loyalty to the Emperor really at all, and the Emperor hasn't any to him. And that's how the dark side is, and that's how it always has been portrayed in Star Wars, as a destructive evil force. And that's how you've got to portray it. Like, I don't think you can suddenly switch the idea and go, well, actually, these two people are now bonded because of the shared love of the dark side. It's like, no. Like, this guy, Camille, like, which was an interesting character at first. In one episode, he was pretty interesting, and then he was like, his motivation, there's a difference between a good villain motivation and a good antagonist motivation. Like, a good villain motivation is always important because you want to know why someone does what they do. But that doesn't necessarily mean that then the good guy, like, everything they do is justified because they've just said one thing. So with Khmer, for example, when it's revealed he's a Sith, and he massacres, he kills, like, Jackie, who's one of the other good characters in the show. Get off! Fuck off. Phone is. Where I left it. I'll just go get it in a sec. He says, like, oh well, you brought her here. Like, this young Jedi he massacres, kills them outright, and the Sol, who's like the sort of father figure, is really distraught and upset. And he says, well, you brought her here. And Alyssa Headland's talked at length about how, yes, it makes you think, then yeah, he did bring her here. He trained her, he forced her into his life, and he did other stuff. It's like, hold on a sec, you can't just excuse someone killing somebody because he brought them there and he raised him like that. Like, that's a good villain motivation. It's good for us to understand why he does what he does, because no one wants a villain that's just bad for the sake of being bad. It's a bit rubbish. But that's not the kind of motivation that you can suddenly go, oh, he's a good guy now. Like, I understand that everything he's done is justified. And then he's like, oh, well, I have to kill everybody to keep myself secret. I'm like, okay. But then when it comes to next episode, it comes to Osha or May or whatever the fuck she is. No, he doesn't have to kill her all of a sudden. He's not bothered about that. He just wants to be friends with her. It's like, well, surely her of everybody you would have to kill, because you're the one you've taken her in, you've shown her all this stuff. It would be a case of him, like I thought, trying to seduce to the dark side, and at some point, again having that Sith idea that you're going to try and get rid of her because she knows too much about you, and you would just be using her as some sort of pawn to keep yourself secret. Like, that's what I thought his end game would be. But then it doesn't. It's like, no, he actually does like her, and it's not just a ploy. It's like him being like, oh, I want an acolyte because I want someone to share my life with. And I was just like, what the fuck? This isn't a Sith. And I know that some people say, oh, he's not a Sith. I'm like, well, he's a dark side user. He kills Jedi, has a red lightsaber. Like, he might as well be a Sith. He's walking past the dark side, essentially. And the way that it portrays the dark side is this ridiculous idea that, like, it's a lifestyle choice, like, that someone's repressing you from. I'm like, no, that's not it. Like, it's pure evil. It's the path of pure evil. That's why people don't want you to do it. It's like opting to become a murderer, basically, and going, well, if you say to, if my daughter said to me, right, Daddy, I'm going to become a murderer, I'm going to go out and kill loads of people, I'm not going to sit there and go, oh, well, it's your life, it's your choice. If you want to do that, you go and do it. And you're like, hell no, you're not going to go kill loads of people. Where's this come from? What's going on? Let's talk, etc. You're not just going to let someone do that, are you? You're not just going to give them. And it's like, it's impinging on my freedom. It's like, yeah, because you're going to go massacre other people. Like, no one wants to take people's rights away from them. But once it becomes a criminal act, that's a law issue. Like, it's pretty clear in the law in the UK. Like, you can have any opinion you want and live the life you want, and you should be able to. You should be able to live whatever life you want. But the minute that infringes on someone else's liberty, the minute that becomes a criminal thing where other people are getting hurt and other people are getting killed, then you can't do it. Like, it overrules the rule of law, and it's crazy to me that that's not evident, that that's what the Jedi were. They were just about preserving the rule of law. And the show kind of casts them as these, like, cops. Like, they feel like they're the LAPD or something. And obviously the Black Lives Matter thing and the George Floyd thing. And I understand that, like, there's a case for saying, we should be questioning the institutions that we trust and how much trust should we put in them. I mean, absolutely, there's a case for that. And applying that to Jedi could have worked if it'd been done in a nuanced way. And if you were sort of not saying, well, it's the whole system that's the problem, more like within the system there are maybe certain characters or certain people who aren't doing things right, and because of those people, it's not working. Like I would say with Luke, Anakin falling to the dark side, part of that was Obi-Wan's fault. And that wasn't necessarily all the Jedi's fault. It was essentially Obi-Wan's fault for not training him properly. And yes, you could say, well, the Jedi were repressing him, the Jedi were rejecting him and all this stuff. But really, the Jedi were just being cautious because he could turn to the dark side. And, like, they were flawed in their thinking. That's pretty clear because, Qui-Gon never doubts him. And Qui-Gon says, he's not dangerous. His future's unsure, And I think that's the audience that Star Wars is trying to reach, is kids who their outcome or their life or their hasn't been decided yet. They're in that middle place where it could go anywhere. And that's what films were originally designed to try and do, to help those kids and those people. And someone else touched on this, like the fact that a young Jedi like Corbin, Jedi Master Corbin, who's like 20 something, he's a young Jedi, and then 15 years later he has this dodgy wig on him and he takes poison and kills himself. And I'm like, it's a really bad message to send to any young person who's watching it, that you could make a mistake so bad that it would justify you killing yourself, or that actually you 20 years later you would just want to kill yourself over it. Like, that is a horrible message, because that's the exact opposite of what Lucas was trying to say. He wasn't trying to say, like, and also the aspects of Darth Vader being redeemed. I think he was also trying to say, like, if you make a bad choice, or you do something terrible, or you hurt people, it isn't too late to turn it around. If you want to, if you're ready to, but you need, the change needs to come from you. It can't come from an external force, and that was kind of that was kind of the critique of the Jedi in a way. Is like they were essentially an external force, and at some point, that external force isn't going to work. It's got to be a position that comes internally, and that's why all their efforts to wipe out Palpatine and the dark side didn't really work, because at the end of the day, they're an external force just coming in trying to wipe them out in a very, like, even Obi-Wan says to Luke, guilt trips him into saying you've got to kill Vader in the same way as Yoda guilt tripped him into killing Anakin. It's like, well, they still think ultimately that he's a big threat and the threat has to be killed. And Padme is very shocked by that idea, and she's like, "What? You're going to kill him?" And he's like, "Well, he's become a great threat." And it's like, "What are we going to do?" But the reality is that the way forward was not to kill him, but to show him compassion. And that's what Luke did, and that was a unique thing Luke did that led to his father being saved and the galaxy being saved. And so it already critiqued the Jedi way without needing to critique it that much. Like, it was subtly suggested, and if you put your head together, you could understand that the original trilogy weren't saying, all six movies when you put together weren't saying like the way the Jedi was perfect, or what they thought about things was perfect, because Luke sort of disproved it at the end. He disproved the fact that you can have connections to other people and it doesn't necessarily lead you to the dark side, and you can overcome that, which he did. But also, he nearly did go to the dark side as well, so it's not like there isn't a precedent for them worrying about it, especially what happened with Anakin. So I do see and understand. I do think that it's like the original movies, even though they were just made for kids, were much more nuanced and interesting in what they were saying. And this show, which I don't know who the fuck it's made for, really. Like, I guess edgelord teenagers. I don't know. Like, it's obviously not made for kids. But then I'm like, well, who is it? Because it's so rubbishly acted. I can't imagine adults watching it. It's not like Andor, that was actually quite mature. It's really stupidly childish, and I think any adult with any brain will watch it and go, this doesn't make any actual sense. Or maybe they just watch it for a laugh and like not take it too serious, which everyone has a precedent, everyone's free to do that. But you're not going to get a return on $180 million for a show if that's just the only audience you're getting. Is like some people who watch it just because the next week something great will come on Netflix that is actually well reviewed, but is actually good, and they will probably stop watching the Acolyte and go and watch that. Like, it's they've not got a loyalty to the fan base. Like, that's the thing, is the people who are loyal to the brand, who will watch everything, like me. Like, I'll watch every Star Wars show, I'll play every Star Wars game, even the shit ones, just to see. If they're not on board, you're really going to struggle to keep it going. And they're the sort of the nucleus that you need to get on board. Like with the Mandalorian, like, you need to get the hardcore fans in there. The hardcore fans are going to start tweeting about it, blogging about it, like, all the social media stuff on it, and then the intermediate people will start checking it out and looking at it, and if they like it, then the people further out from then start doing it, and eventually you have like what happened with Marvel, where it's like pretty much everyone in the country or world knows what Marvel is. They know who the characters are because it started with hardcore fans, and I think that's what Marvel have forgotten, is that you need to keep that core fan base happy, and then it all rolls from there. And if you just suddenly abandon your core principles of what you built the whole thing on and decide to chase, like, as they do, more growth, more other people, but you've actually lost in doing that the core people who actually got the thing going and were actually going to sort of turn up and show up for you, like the ones who buy all the merchandise, the ones who watch all the stuff, who go to all the conventions. If you're kind of losing them, like, you're going to crumble, and that's what they started to do. And again, eventually they were making Marvel films that no one wanted to see, like, and that's why. Anyway, I'm cross talking about Marvel now, so I shouldn't really be. But with Star Wars, again, they're making stuff that no one wants to see, like the prequels, for all their eye they attracted, and people will probably deny this till blue in the face now, but it was a story people wanted to see at the time. At least some people wanted to see how he became Darth Vader. They wanted to see him and Obi-Wan having that fight when they were young. They wanted to have some of the stuff that was referenced in the original trilogy, actually shown and given a bit more detail to. They wanted to see that there was definitely an interest in telling those stories. And that's why even if people hated them, they watched a lot of them, and all three of them did really well because there was an interest there. And I just don't see the interest in the Acolyte. I don't see where the in a big enough way to keep it going. Like there's obviously some people who love it, but there's some people of all kinds of shows. Like I love Westworld. First two seasons were great. After fourth season, they canned it because it wasn't doing well. Are they going to bring that back just because I liked it? No, they're not, and they shouldn't because it didn't do well enough. Get off! Get off! So I've got an annoying cat here. Get in there! Stupid fucking cat. I have to edit that out, right? So, there's tons and tons of shows that get cancelled all the time for the same reason Acolyte's cancelled. I mean, there's a great show called Firefly from years ago, and that was Joss Whedon, which I'm not a fan of now, but in terms of Joss Whedon's show, it was really good. Like, it was some of the best writing he'd ever done. It was some of the best characters ever come up with. And that show bombed. It didn't do well in the ratings, and it didn't get a second season. And admittedly, they made like a sort of movie of it later to sort of resolve it, but it never came back. And to this day, I was still fans who are championing, hoping that Firefly will come back, hoping that like the cast will somehow reunite and do another version of it. And I would say there's more chance of it happening now than ever because there's a lot of things going into like legacy sequels and stuff that's been away for 20 years coming back. So who knows? But like Nathan Fillion sort of said, no, it's not happening. And with all the stuff that's happened, Joss Whedon, I don't see it happening. And that was a great show. Like that was a really good show. I watched that Firefly show and I was like, this is really, really good. What a shame it didn't find its audience. And while the film was good, you can tell they had to rush a lot. Like what would have been maybe eked out over maybe 2-3 seasons had to be quickly done in one movie because that was all they were going to get to wrap it up. So it was a little rushed, but it was still good. I still thought it was really enjoyable and good. But yeah, it's a sad thing when you like something like that. But anyway, that's it. I'm going to stop recording. That's all I'm going to say about Acolyte. That is it. Finished. Done.